Good day. Welcome to the Leader's Edge. And today we are on season 10, episode 7. And the title is Development Unhinged. What, what a great title. Our guest tonight is none other than Victor Esguerra, Vic to his friends. And he is a graduate of Biophysics from the Australian National University. He has a career in IT, initially as a developer and then as a systems business process analyst, specializing in fraud and governance. Currently, he is a software designer for mobile applications. Really, really awesome to have him as our guest tonight. Vic, welcome to the virtual stage.
Well, good day, everyone.
All right, so uh, ladies and gentlemen, you know what? As all of our guests have mentioned, they normally begin their journey with a spark. And Vic, like many of our guests, must have had an inspiration when he first
Mm.
decided he wanted to become devoted to science and economics. So let me ask Vic, what inspired you to pursue science and economics as your field of study?
I have to tell you, do you know, the person who really pushed me, even though he didn't really push, was my dad.
Oh,
It was
okay.
just things that he did. Like my first, my first gift from my dad was a science kit when I was 8 years old.
Oh,
And then when I was 10 years old, it was a radio, do it yourself radio that I had to put together. At 12 years old, I was installing all of the electrical stuff in the house, like all the switches and light bulbs and all the wiring. I was doing that at the age of 12. So it was just my dad driving me.
that sounds awesome. Uh, I wish I had a dad like that. But when you started out as early as 12, making your own radio and installing a lot of electronic stuff in the house,
Mm.
was that something that you found a natural inclination to, or did it grow on you? I mean, like, did you
No.
love it right away?
Yeah, so he just automatically would get me, like I had brothers and sisters, but he would always call me to do all of these things.
Oh, okay. So like you were his go-to person when it comes
I was the
to
handyman.
wow. So for our viewers out there, if you have children, uh, whether it's just one child or many, do take the heart from what Vic has just shared with us. Let them tinker, let them explore.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you
I,
never
I built
know.
my first car. The first car that I drove, I built it
Oh,
myself out of just stuff that I would get from the car yard, like junkyard. I bought an old engine, I bought an old car body, and just put it all together at 18 years old. I guess my interest in economics started when I was still a child, like maybe around 10, 11, 12. I can still remember my dad walking with me at what we used to call Dewey Boulevard, which is now Rojas Boulevard. And he would take me to all these poor places. And he would talk to me about poverty and why these people were there. And so that never left me. So after I graduated with biophysics, and then I also graduated with an IT degree. After that, I never lost the interest in finding out why we have poverty.
mm,
Why do we have poverty on the planet? And why do we have specifically poverty in the Philippines?
mm,
Right? So, really, if we talk about economic independence, it, it is something that we can achieve. Um, Just imagine if there were no other country in the world, if the Philippines was the only country on this planet. Are you telling me that if we don't have anybody to borrow money from, we're just going to sink to the bottom of the sea?
That's a good question. And come to think of it, in light of all of the foreign aid that comes in annually, because we do get a lot of it, a lot of typhoons, lots of disasters. And yet we see things like after a year, Tacloban is still not really rehabilitated.
Sure.
The conflict in Marawi has left the city still devastated. Um, how do we get out of that?
It's a matter of governance, do you know? Like all of these countries, they will keep sending us money
Mm,
because they see us as a developing nation, right? But the developed countries have a tendency anyway to send money to wherever they think there's been a disaster, right? It
mm,
doesn't have to be an underdeveloped country. They would send money to even to developed countries because that's just what they do. Now,
mm,
the money that comes to us, to the Philippines, it's really only a drop in the ocean compared to how much money there is on the planet. But
mm,
what happens to the money is it doesn't get spent properly.
mm.
It could be spent a lot better.
I agree with you. In many ways, we need to have, I guess, a form of transparency and a
Absolutely.
stronger form of accountability for how that money was spent. Because uh, those of us who think and wonder can't help but wonder where the money went.
Yeah. So the question is, what do we do about this?
Mm,
Right. So I think a lot of people are thinking, when will the West stop sending money to us? Like, when are they gonna get tired of sending money, thinking that nothing's happening anyway?
mm,
Well, the the West will only start seeing us as a good country to send funds to when they can see that our governance is correct, and that will only happen when they see that our elected officials have integrity.
mm,
That and that will only happen if our election system improves.
mm. I tend to agree with you there because um, even though what's happening to us isn't an isolated case, there is a lot of distrust going on around the world
Well, a
Trump
lot
and
of the
Biden's
African
time,
countries are like that.
and the African countries too. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I agree with you that fundamentally trust needs to be restored in many of the systems that are in
yeah.
place.
Mm.
So let's assume that somehow trust were brought back. What would be the next step? Where would we go from there?
Well, we have to look at. I guess we still have a little bit of colonial mentality, right?
Mm,
We need a change of mindset
mm,
in this country. I can't remember the author who said it. I think it might have been Easterly, who wrote a book about mindset. And if we keep, like, a lot of people here in the Philippines who work in the development area, they just assume that we're a poor country. Who
mm,
is looking into why are we doing this? Who's looking at why are we having to get funds from overseas? Why can't we fend for ourselves? Who's looking
mm,
into that sort of question? Even the people in government, even our economic gurus in government, they just assume that we're going to keep getting all these funds whenever we're in trouble. But
mm.
why? Why can't it be the other way around? Why can't we be the country that's helping other countries?
I love that sentiment because when I think about Singapore, for example, when Britain and Malaysia decided they weren't going to be helping them anymore, I'm sure that caused an enormous sense of anxiety from Lee Kuan Yew and from the Singaporeans when they were suddenly left out in the cold. But look at where they are now.
Yeah.
Um, would you please share with our viewers your feelings about how Singapore managed to get out of?
Well, I happen to know the story of Singapore. When Lee Kuan Yew did jump in, right? The first thing he did was he looked at all the people in the public service and he said, any of you who are wealthy, who have multiple houses, who have a lot of nice cars, you're out of the public service.
Okay.
Simple as that. And Lee Kuan Yew being a strongman sort of person, um, the people just swallowed it, and the public service transformed overnight. So
Mhm.
some of them would complain and say, "Hey, I'm wealthy because I have a business, because my wife has a business." And Lee Kuan Yew would simply say, "Well, if you're that wealthy, why are you working in the government?
Good question. Yeah.
Get out of here, do your own business, right?"
Mm.
So overnight, it's hard to believe that within a couple of years, Singapore went from being a very corrupt country to a country that's unbelievably honest.
Uh, there's something I heard about Lee Kuan Yew, and I'm wondering it's true that he sent even his own brother to jail. Is that true?
I'm not 100% sure, but yes, I have heard that story.
Yeah,
Yep.
because the brother was caught doing something wrong, and Lee Kuan Yew decided he was going to be hands off, um,
Yes,
let the law
it's
take
what
its
you have to do.
course. Mm.
If you really have integrity, that's what you have to do.
Hmm. So, given that many of the systems in our nation could still be improved, and the truth is, many things in life uh, has that room for growth, no room for improvement.
Yeah.
Um, how can we move from the perception? I don't know if this is true, but the perception that we are a third world country to someday becoming a first world country. As an
Okay.
economist, how do we get there?
Okay. If you look at the countries in Latin America and in Africa compared to the newly industrialized countries, mainly in East Asia,
Mm.
what was the difference? Right? The main difference was that these countries who jumped up from, I guess, from the south to the north, is they were an exporting country. They were net exporters. That really is the plain secret. It's as simple as that. If you this thing about getting direct FDIs, foreign direct investments, is it FDIs, right?
Mhm.
So here we have President Marcos going out looking for foreign investors to invest here. That's okay, provided that the money that the foreigner who comes here and sets up a business sets up a corporation where they export more than what they earn as profits. Because if they set up a company here and they sell all their products in the Philippines and then they expatriate the profit, we just lost money,
True.
right? But what the Singaporeans and the Taiwanese and all these successful countries did, they did invite some foreign investors, but they made sure that these companies that were set up would export more than the profits that were expatriated. So if a company expatriates, let's say, $10 million as profit, and they exported $20 million as export for the country, that means the country gained $10 million.
True, which would be good for our balance of trade and dealing with the deficits, and most importantly, to make sure that we have enough dollars in our banking system
It's very
for trade.
simple, isn't it? It's a very
Yeah,
simple formula. It's like if I have a corner store and you had a corner store, right? Sari Sari store. And then I keep buying from you and you don't buy anything from me. How long do you think I'll last? Right? Simple
agreed.
mathematics. I mean, you don't need to have all these mumbo jumbo econometric stuff. You don't need all these Harvard economic graduates working in the government to work out what to do best, right? I mean, the most successful Chinese in business, a lot of them didn't even finish school. You don't need econometrics to do simple business. It's simple. Export more than you import, you will be successful.
I'd like to validate what you shared because we recently had a guest on our show that's Colin Blackwell. He's based in Vietnam. And he was saying that one of the good things about the Vietnamese government is that it's a very consultative government. So, because of that character, the character of their governance, um, Vietnam is now exporting electric vehicles,
Yeah.
and it's at par with Tesla. In fact, it's half the price of a Tesla, but with greater range and also nice design. So, borrowing from your line of thinking, it's sad that yes, we do have a lot of FDIs, foreign investors, but if I hear you right, we should really be supporting, say, Sarao or any of our homegrown industries so that they can begin to export what they build.
Yeah. We need to be proud of our products. We just need to be very conscious that we become a net exporter. We're not a net exporter. We've been a net importing country for a long time. And even when I go to a department store and I buy something, every time I want to buy a pair of shoes or pair of trousers, the first thing that I would ask the salesperson is, where was this made? And they'll say to me, sir, this was made in China. This was made in Vietnam. And then I'll say, what about this one? Oh, it was just here in the Philippines. Dito lang po. And I get so mad. And I say to the salesperson, what do you mean? You should be proud it was made here.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a change of mindset. It's a mental thing. We need
Mm,
to be proud of our products, whether it's superior or not. Just the fact that it was made here, you should be proud of it.
mm.
Then
Uh,
we will become maybe net exporters.
I agree. We do possess a very strong colonial mentality. Ask the average uh, working person what kind of car he would eventually like to buy, and so he would be dreaming about a Mustang, from
Yeah.
Ford or any of those big SUVs. But nobody will be thinking about buying anything that is locally produced, if at all. And that extends even to food or to clothing.
Yes.
It's sad.
Yes.
It's not the way we should be thinking, in short. So
Yeah.
my question to you, Vic, would be: how do we wean people away from this? Let me just call it what it is:
Yeah.
addiction to imported products.
Yeah. I'm afraid I think it needs to start with the government. Like we can do very simple things. Like the president can make an announcement just on TV and just convince people, right?
Mm,
If you buy your own products, we will stop being poor. Just
mm,
make it appeal to people. Make people feel proud that
yeah.
they are producing things. If it's made
Mm,
by you, it's better than anything that's made in China or Vietnam or anywhere else.
mm,
Even though yours breaks down every 6 months and the imported one lasts 10 years, it doesn't matter. You made it, it's got to be better. Okay, it's a story, it's the same story as when two Japanese students went to Russia. This was when Japan was still poor, and then they were using lead pencils, and their lead pencils kept breaking. I don't know if you've heard the story before. So the Russian teacher went to the Japanese students and said, why don't you use Russian pencils? They're better. And the students said, sir, if we stop using Japanese pencils, what will happen to us?
mm. Good point. In other words, um, biting the bullet from time to time, or taking some sacrifices uh, in the name of, say, nationalism or self-preservation is sensible. Hmm.
It's not even, I don't even see it as nationalism. I just see it as be proud of what you make.
True. Being having that sense of pride, and I think we can point to some models of people who do have that sense of pride, and it's local. And one word: paete, because all of the wood carvers there, are world renowned. I mean, people make a
True.
deliberate effort to go to Paete just to buy.
True.
Uh,
And I can also tell you this, Philippine made shoes are very good.
yes, in
No matter,
Marikina.
absolutely. It doesn't have to be Marikina, but my shoes are always GB, which is
Mm,
Philippine made, right? All my shoes, as much as possible, everything that I buy has to be
mm.
Philippine made.
Do you remember a Toastmaster named Rudolfo Valentino or Rudy Valentino?
I know the name, but I don't remember him.
Yeah,
Yes.
he used to be, when he was still alive, he used to be an active member of the Toastmasters, and he often gave me discounts just to go to his store, which is Valentino Shoes, and I
Mm.
wore his shoes with pride for many decades.
Oh yeah, nice, nice.
Because they weren't just ready-made shoes. I could sit in there and somebody would take a measurement of my foot, and then the shop would custom make a pair of shoes just
Yeah,
for my feet.
I've
uh,
experienced that. Yes.
yeah. And yet this was certainly way more affordable than, say, an imported pair of shoes. So I just say I miss him because he's passed away already, but his shoe business, I think, is still ongoing in Marikina.
Yeah. Oh,
Mm.
nice. So my question, Dino, is why can't we do this? Why can't the Philippine government just start putting out advertisements and start convincing people that the best thing for us is for you to buy local? Why can't they do that?
I think it did begin. The wind blew in the right direction during the time of Gordon. I'm sure you remember.
Yeah.
It's more fun in the Philippines. Like we
Yes.
we had that campaign, and it was such a big hit. People around the world really bought into
Mm.
it. Fellow
Yeah.
Filipinos, we did TikTok dances about you know
Yes.
it being more fun over here.
I think
Uh,
it's easily done. Like, Filipinos are very proud. I,
yeah,
I see Filipinos around me. They're very proud to be Filipino. All they need to do is extend that to, I'm proud also to buy my own products.
indeed. Because anytime that Manny Pacquiao had a fight,
Yes.
traffic would vanish from our
Yes.
streets because of the Philippine
Because he's
pride.
Filipino.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then when,
So it just needs a little bit of a nudge.
you're right. Um, it may seem difficult or maybe even impossible, but the impetus is already there. It may be just like a set of dominoes. All it needs is a little push. And
Yes.
then tuloy-tuloy na yan, we would begin to think Filipino, buy Filipino,
Yes.
patronize
Yes.
everything that is Filipino.
The other things also that we can do is we need to improve our education. The
Mm,
standard of our education, it needs to change. Like, the educators, they just need to take this a bit more seriously. And
mm,
also, we need to do some R&D. Like, I worked in Apeldoorn for a while in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and I
mm,
worked for Philips. And if you go to Apeldoorn, Philips has what they call a campus. They're like just barracks, 2 or 3 story buildings that are very long,
mm,
and there were about 8 or 10 of those buildings, and I worked in those. They were actually laboratories, and in Philips they spend so much money on R&D. So it's the inventions like the cassette tape. Okay, we don't use it anymore. The CD, the microwave, all of these, and of course the light bulbs. All of these things are invented by Philips, and then Philips doesn't necessarily. They're not necessarily the ones who will manufacture. They will sell the rights to Japan or to China or somewhere, and then they will get royalties.
mm,
Okay,
mm,
and Philips makes so much money. So what they do, in fact, we also used to do this in Australia, where I, it used to be like 4% of the government budget would go to R&D, right? It was a huge industry just doing research. And if we could do the same thing in the Philippines, nothing beats R&D if you want to get good products and become a net exporter.
mm. No wonder Philip says, we invent things.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So one of the tools that can help uh, encourage people to export, to build things, to create things together is capital. How do you feel about the idea of zero interest loans for venture capitalists?
It's the way to go. If we have zero interest loans given by the government as a venture capitalist, the government can be a venture capitalist.
Mhm.
They refuse to because they think that this is something that private industry should do. But all right, again, that's an argument that um, we can't cover tonight. But
Mm,
if the government were a venture capitalist charging zero interest, then the there will be less accumulation of wealth towards the wealthy end of town, right? Because it's accumulation of wealth that's causing poverty at the other side. If wealth keeps going to the wealthy, you are impoverishing the rest of the people down the bottom.
mm,
So
mhm,
your question was, how do we think we can ensure that zero interest loans will not be abused? I think that's what you're trying to get at, right?
yeah, yeah.
Well, okay, that comes to it's a matter of governance, it's transparency,
Mm,
it's a matter of those people running the show. It could be somebody like the Board of Investments running it. Well, we need to make sure that these people have integrity.
mm,
And until you can ensure that, then I can't reassure you that this is going to happen without abuse. Yes, so that's what I meant by the Board of Investments. They would be
mm,
the think tank. They would be Shark Tank. They would anybody who comes in with a proposal, then the BOI will need to put all their experts in there to have a look at the feasibility plan and make sure that it's something that will return, right? So if I'm the government and I lend you $10 million or ten million pesos, I want to make sure that I'll get the money back, right? So you put all your economic business experts to look at the feasibility of the plan. But that's just one side of the question. The other side of the question is, how do we know that it's not going to be abused? How do we know that
mm.
venture capital is not going to go to somebody's uncle, somebody's cousin, somebody's family? How do we know that's not going to happen?
True. And among many things that we know actually work is that when we don't just give capital to just one person but to groups of people like
Yeah.
cooperatives. So
Yes.
um my question would be, what role would, say, consumer and worker cooperatives play in helping us become economically independent?
Okay, this is what happens with cooperatives. Do you know the biggest cooperative in the world is a company that you know very well? A company is called Mondragon.
Oh, okay.
They are the largest worker owned cooperative on the planet. They have about 70,000 employees who all have shares in the company. So, what happens when you have a cooperative? If it's a worker owned cooperative, that means all the workers have a share in the cooperative. If it's a consumer owned cooperative, that means all of the buyers, all of the people who buy from the cooperative get discounts, maybe as rebates, right? So whatever profits the cooperative makes, they return them to the consumers. Now, at the end of the day, the workers are also consumers, right? So it doesn't matter whether it's a worker cooperative or a consumer cooperative. At the end of the day, what happens is all of the profits get distributed to the back to the people. So I'll give you an example. If you take somebody like BPI made a profit of 29 billion pesos in 2019. They have 21,000 employees. BPI, the bank. Do you know that translates to 1.38 million per employee profit? Now, if the employees had one share each, every employee at the end of the year will get a bonus of 1.38 million.
So all of them would be
If
millionaires.
if BPI were run like a cooperative,
Yeah.
that's what happens.
Mm.
But BPI is not a cooperative. They're owned, the majority, like 99% of BPI, is owned by like three or four people.
Mm.
So all of the 29 billion, where do you think it went? Right?
Mm. Mm.
It's BPI is owned by the Ayala Corporation, something like 59%, 42% by the Ayala Corporation, a bit more. There's 30% that goes to a community something, which I think is just also an Ayala thing. And then look at PLDT, same sort of thing. PLDT makes 26 billion pesos. It's owned 17% by a Hong Kong company called First Pacific.
Mm.
It's owned 12% by JG Summit, and the balance is owned by Cowanco. But that 17% goes to Hong Kong every year,
Oh, it does.
right? PLDT, money being expatriated from the Philippines. What about Meralco? 46% of Meralco is owned by Metro Pacific.
Mm.
46% of the profits of Meralco goes overseas. We're losing money every year. 24 billion pesos Meralco made in 2019.
Those are things that the common man doesn't even know, walking around the streets not realizing that a lot of our profits, a lot of the money that the companies here make, uh, go to a different country.
They get expatriated.
Yeah. So that would be like the big picture. Now I'd like to direct us a little bit to maybe something more localized. Like, I realize that you are in IT now, and you also develop apps for use on mobile
Mobile
phones.
applications, yes.
I can see that there's resonance in what you've chosen as another career with what the ordinary Filipino, the ordinary entrepreneur can do, especially if he wants to contribute to becoming economically independent. I'd like your take on what Colin Blackwell shared a few weeks back, which was that a lot of people in IT, or a lot of programmers, or developers, have gone into gaming and joined guilds, and they're earning from that. Uh, in other words, the economy, because of the pandemic, has also caused a shift in behavior, in how people want to be employed and what they want to do so that they can continue to earn. um, is app development something that is viable for say anybody with some talent in programming?
It's not as easy as it looks. Now, it depends on the app. Some apps are quite simple, but even the simplest apps takes more than a year to develop. So, if you are a dedicated developer, sure, you can come up with an app that, that will end up being used by millions of people, and then you'll make some money. Depends on how you market that. So, it really depends on how you, what do you call it, monetize the
Yeah.
application.
Mm. But Vic, come to think of it, because you are multi-skilled, and certainly almost like a Da Vinci in terms of the many abilities that you have. It just tickles my imagination. Just now, I had an epiphany. Wouldn't it be nice if there was an app that somehow all people in government were required to download, so that that app would then be able to monitor, say, instead of having to ask for a SALM, a statement of assets and liabilities, stuff like that. The app would tell the ordinary citizen, who could also download it, to in real time, how these people were doing, how they were earning, and what they were doing. Like, if he's supposed to be in the office, Is he there?
That's not a difficult app to write. It's a question of whether they will use it or not.
Mm, I get what you're saying. Yes, it may not be a popular thing for them to do because uh, they'll cite privacy issues.
Yeah. I don't want my wife to know where I was today.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Okay, so but still, being able to write apps that will eventually become popular and successful. So even if you just make revenue from the ads, could be enormous. No
Yeah.
wonder you went into it. Hmm. Uh,
Yeah.
is, is there an app that you developed that you'd like to tell us about or share with our
They're
audience?
still being developed right now, but
Mm,
two of them will be completed, I think, by the end of this year.
mm.
So one of them is an app that is like a junior POS system. POS is what they use
Point of sale.
in restaurants here.
Yeah.
So the app that I'm developing is not for restaurants, it's for canteens. It's for the mom and pop level
Mm,
canteen, right? So I'm pricing them so that it's like a typical POS system would cost you 200 to 300,000 pesos. So I'm targeting my POS to cost about 5,000 pesos so that
mm,
the ordinary canteen owner can afford it. That's one of them. The other app that I'm writing right now is a real estate app. Now, there are already many real estate apps
mm,
around. So there's dot property ph, there is lamudi, there are like, if you look at the internet you'll find about a dozen different real estate apps already. So why did I end up writing another one?
mm,
The reason is this: I was looking for property to buy a year ago, more than a year ago now, and I found some properties on the internet that I sort of was a bit interested in. So I put in an inquiry, right? The inquiry is meant to go to the agent, and then the agent's supposed to call me back.
mm,
I did this with 6 or 7 different websites.
mm.
I did not get a single call.
Hmm. Odd that that happened because it's the agent's job to
Yeah,
promote it.
yes. So I was thinking, what is wrong with these people, right?
Mm.
So I decided I'll make one myself. So I
Yeah.
designed my own app, and it's not a big app to develop. It's been We've been working on it now for about 6 months.
Mm,
So hopefully in another couple of months it'll be ready, and then I'll get agents to start putting their properties in. And my priority there would be, if anybody inquires, zoom, we get in
mm.
and service the person.
So what you've just shared with us is a hand pointing in the direction where ordinary citizens could create their own wealth, create their own exports. So it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be, say, in traditional industries. It can be in blue water industries or in new
Oh,
industries.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, this is the future of the world, right? I mean, it's
Mm.
all in here.
Yeah.
It's all in
That's
here.
true. It's not even in desktops anymore because we rely on our phones for pretty much everything now. um
Yeah,
so,
what
so
happens when you leave the house without your phone? You go back and get it.
yeah, you know what, that's true because sometimes when I leave the house and I realize I forgot to bring my driver's license, and yet it's too far to go back for it now. Then I just behave really well in traffic.
Yes, but
But
if it's a
when
phone,
well, you're right. When I realize, oh my God, where's my phone? Where's my phone? What if I have a flat tire or have an emergency and I need to call for help? So I turn
yeah,
around and go
yes,
back.
yes,
So you could say, I suppose, Vic, that as human beings, we've become partly cyborgs now, where we can no longer function without our devices.
I'm afraid so. Yeah, it's communication also. Like, we're so used to being, just at the end of the phone
Mm.
to be able to communicate with people.
Now, as a programmer and as a scientist as well, I'd like your take on the proposal that Elon Musk has about with say Neuralink, where a chip would be embedded inside our head, so that you won't even need a device. In effect, your brain is now directly connected to the web, so you'd have access to information. And I guess the scary part is the web will also have access to your memories.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't buy that. I wouldn't
Hmm.
go for that. I'd be too scared to do that
Yeah, I suppose.
personally.
Yeah, yeah. Because you'd start to wonder which memories are yours and which were.
Yeah. Which dreams are mine? Which dreams are yours?
Mm. And that could lead to, say, thought control. So we don't want that. But going back to education, because you did mention that we need good teachers. So I'll just summarize. No, we need good teachers. We need good governance. We need transparency. We need a better way of choosing leaders. We need support for local industries. We need to be more export oriented rather than
Absolutely.
import oriented. Those are a lot of concepts that we need to get into. But the best part of what you shared tonight was that we already have built into us this natural tendency to support what is Filipino. We do that with our beauty queens, and our country has
Yes.
produced so many. We do that with our pugilists. We do that with our weightlifters, the
Mm,
first one to get us a gold medal.
mm. Yeah.
um, so there is hope, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely. We just need good leadership. We just need to get somebody at the top who will listen
mm,
and know that it's not hard to do. Like, we need to stop thinking like a third world country,
mm,
right? If we get a leader up there who knows that, hey, we can do this.
mm,
Why
mm.
do I need help from the US, from Germany, from Japan, from anybody? I can do this myself.
True, true. So on that note, I'd like to ask you, Vic, if people should like to reach out to you, say, maybe to write columns or to be a guest on their shows, how do they find you?
Victor Esguerra at gmail.com.
Oh,
Simple
okay.
as that.
Yes, um, because you are what I would call a font of wisdom and of technical expertise. I say, for example, that maybe in a different episode we'll bring you back to talk about fraud detection, which is also one of your skill sets,
Yes.
because that would be great, especially in the light that today there is so much scamming going on. It's scary to click on an innocent link, or to respond to a Facebook post just because it
Yeah.
seems interesting.
Yeah. My work was more on governance. It was just making sure that procedures got followed and that nobody was like cheating the system.
Mm, mm-mm.
Yeah, and that was with the
Wonderful.
Australian government.
Oh, okay. No wonder you picked up the accent a little bit.
A
Yeah,
little bit. Oh, I
yeah.
can turn it on if I need to. When I'm speaking to an Australian, I sound very Australian.
Yeah. So this is probably off topic already, but I'm just curious. How long have you been in Australia?
I grew up in Australia. We
Oh, okay.
moved there when I studied high school in Australia.
Mm,
I was here for primary school. Then we moved to Australia for my high school onwards because my dad migrated and we were kids. So we just went along for the ride.
mm. Um, just out of curiosity, would you advise Filipinos, for example, to consider moving to Australia? I mean, how is it
I
like over
would.
there?
I would definitely move to Australia rather than the US. Maybe you can move to England or
Mm.
Australia. And for the very simple reason that we don't have guns in Australia,
Okay.
right? And the US, every bloody single man and his dog has a gun, right? We
I
don't
know
have
what you're
guns.
saying. Yeah, they do have a strong lobby in the NRA
Yes,
and what they call the Second Amendment from
yes,
their Bill of
yes.
Rights. Yeah.
And because we don't have guns, our crime rate in Australia is 1/50th of the of the US per capita. America has
Wow.
50 times more crime, gun-related crimes than we have.
Mm. Um, on a related topic, I'd like to ask, because you have essentially lived most of your life in Australia, um, uh, would I, for example, if I move there, uh, what would I expect? Would there be some form of discrimination, or is that something that we don't really have to worry about?
You don't have to worry about that. I personally have never experienced discrimination, and I think that's only because I behave like them. Right?
Oh,
If you
okay.
behave like an Aussie, they'll treat you like an Aussie. But if you
Mm,
behave like a foreigner, then they're not as ready to accept you, right? But it's not about speaking like them. No, it's just about thinking like them.
mm. And then speaking of thinking like them, I do appreciate the fact that they're not into being politically correct all the time.
No,
You walk into a bar and you're likely to to hear humor that is straight, direct to the point.
we laugh at ourselves, so it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, there's always a bit of discrimination, I think. It doesn't matter where you go. Even in the
Mm,
Philippines, there's a lot of
true.
discrimination. So
True.
so you will experience some,
Mm,
but it just depends on your behavior, your attitude. Like
mm,
I don't let people discriminate against me,
mm.
so it doesn't happen.
So, as we end tonight's episode, um, I'd like to thank Vic here in behalf of my fellow host in The Leader's Edge. Thank you so much, Vic, for sharing your valuable time.
Well, just between you and me, what I'd really like to do is take this to a PhD. So
Whoa,
it's a long
okay.
way to go yet.
Yeah. And someday, when you get there, I hope that we can continue to invite you to be our guest
Of
because
course.
I'd love to hear more of your thoughts and your wisdom. Mm.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, my pleasure to be here.
You're very welcome, Vic. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed our discussion tonight, and tonight, I would say, was a very frank discussion about what needs to happen so that we can indeed become an economy unhinged, development really taking off. So, do click on the like, share, and subscribe so that you also get notified when new episodes come about. And I'd like to also remind everybody that in episode 8, we will be having Nancy Puentes Pina Berame, another good friend and a fellow consultant based in Cebu, who will be talking about attitude and faith as the pathway to success. So, ladies and gentlemen, always remember that learning is a never ending journey with limitless vistas. Good day.
Good day.